In the early autumn of 2019, Eastwood University, an esteemed institution renowned for its cutting-edge biomedical research, buzzed with a blend of academic rigor and quiet ambition. Nestled amid rolling hills and ancient forests, the campus was a tapestry of modern laboratories and century-old buildings, where the pursuit of knowledge was as tangible as the crisp morning air. Among the many brilliant minds that called Eastwood home was Dr. Adrian Shaw, a passionate researcher in regenerative medicine whose work on a novel treatment for a rare neurological disorder had earned him both admiration and envy. Dr. Shaw was known for his methodical approach and unrelenting curiosity. His small cluttered office in the state-of-the-art science building was filled with dog-eared research journals, meticulous lab notebooks, and framed photographs of breakthroughs from decades past. Yet behind his calm, collected exterior lay an intense determination to uncover what he believed were discrepancies in his department's data, a suspicion that had grown with each experiment. Over the past several months, Dr. Shaw had grown increasingly secretive. He spent long hours in his laboratory, poring over streams of digital data and cross-referencing experimental results. His colleagues noted that he would occasionally withdraw from group meetings, scribbling frantic notes on scraps of paper and whispering to himself in the quiet corridors of the research wing. Rumors began to circulate that he was onto something, an irregularity in the way certain data sets were consistently adjusted just enough to produce favorable outcomes in grant applications. Though many dismissed these murmurs as the anxiety of a dedicated academic, a growing number of staff members began to wonder if there was a darker truth hidden in the numbers. Then one chilly November evening, when the campus was cloaked in an unexpected fog and the lights of the laboratories glowed with a soft, otherworldly intensity, the unthinkable occurred. During a routine late-night experiment, Dr. Shaw was found slumped over his workstation in the biomedical research lab. His computer screen still flickered with incomprehensible lines of code, and scattered papers bore his hurried scribbles. The most chilling detail, however, was the small piece of paper clutched in his hand. In a spidery script, the note simply read, "Silence costs more than data." The discovery sent shockwaves through Eastwood University. Campus security and local police converged on the lab within minutes. The usually bustling research facility fell eerily silent as uniformed officers, their faces set in grim determination, cordoned off the area. Detective Imogen Baker, a meticulous investigator known for her patient, unyielding attention to detail, arrived on the scene. Standing in the sterile glow of fluorescent lights among rows of humming equipment, she took in the scene. Dr. Shaw's lifeless form, the faint stain of blood on a pristine lab coat, and the torn note that hinted at a purpose far more sinister than mere accident. Over the next several days, Detective Baker led an exhaustive investigation. She began by interviewing members of the biomedical research team. Dr. Celia Kim, a close colleague of Shaw's, recalled his recent behavior with a mixture of concern and sadness. Adrian was always cautious, but lately he was almost paranoid, she said, her voice quavering. He spent hours checking his data, looking for patterns that didn't add up. He confided in me that he suspected someone was deliberately altering the results. I thought it was just the pressure of funding cycles, but now I fear he uncovered something real. Other team members described him as increasingly isolated, retreating into the quiet corners of the lab after long meetings, muttering about hidden variables and adjusted outcomes. Detective Baker requested access to Dr. Shaw's personal files, and with the cooperation of University IT, her team retrieved a digital archive from his workstation. Among countless research documents were deleted emails and hidden folders labeled with cryptic terms. One file in particular contained a series of encrypted messages exchanged with a mysterious correspondent who signed only as Oracle. In one message, the text warned, "Cease your inquiry or the consequences will be irreversible." The stark, unadorned threat left Baker with little doubt. Shaw's investigation had disturbed someone with both power and motive to suppress the truth. Parallel to the digital trail, forensic experts combed the laboratory for physical evidence. They discovered that several pieces of specialized equipment had been tampered with, soldered circuits on a critical biosensor, and subtle alterations in the calibration settings of a high-precision microscope. Although such changes might have been dismissed as routine adjustments, their consistency with discrepancies in the data raised alarming questions. Every modification pointed to a deliberate intervention, an effort to alter the outcome of experiments in a way that favored a specific narrative. Forensic accountants brought in to review the lab's internal financial and supply records discovered that orders for high-quality reagents and critical components were consistently short by small, almost imperceptible amounts. When aggregated over time, these shortages amounted to a significant diversion of resources that could have been redirected to bolster the lab's capabilities or, more ominously, used to finance clandestine projects. The investigation quickly shifted its focus to the administration of the Biomedical Research Department. Detective Baker arranged meetings with the department chair, Dr. Evelyn Price, a respected academic with a reputation for fairness, and several senior researchers. Dr. Price, who had long been an advocate for rigorous scientific standards, expressed shock at Dr. Shaw's death. "Adrian was one of our brightest minds," she said. "He questioned every anomaly and pushed for transparency. I'm devastated that his passion for truth ended in this tragedy." Yet, when pressed about the discrepancies in the data and the unexplained shortages in supplies, Dr. Price hesitated. Her answers were measured and carefully worded, but a subtle unease flickered in her eyes, an unease that Baker noted with mounting concern. As Baker delved deeper, she uncovered internal memos from the department's administrative offices. One memo, dated several weeks before Shaw's death, mentioned adjusting experimental outcomes to meet funding benchmarks, a phrase that struck Baker as alarmingly vague. The memo was signed by an unidentified senior manager whose initials were redacted from the public record. Such language, combined with the evidence from Shaw's deleted files and the physical tampering of lab equipment, began to weave a tapestry of deliberate interference. It suggested that someone, somewhere in the upper echelons of the department, had engineered a system in which research results could be manipulated to secure lucrative grants and maintain a facade of groundbreaking innovation. Detective Baker's team then turned its attention to external sources. They interviewed representatives from several major funding agencies, who noted that Eastwood University had recently been awarded a series of grants for research in regenerative medicine, a field in which Shaw's work had been at the forefront. One agency official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, disclosed that there had been whispers of internal conflicts within the research department. There were rumors that certain projects were being fast-tracked, with data being adjusted to ensure favorable outcomes, the official confided. It wasn't until recently that these discrepancies started to add up to something significant. This information provided a critical link. The manipulation of data was not only an internal issue but was directly tied to the flow of research funding, a motive that could easily drive individuals to desperate measures. Amid mounting evidence, Detective Baker received a breakthrough when digital forensic experts recovered a nearly complete backup of Shaw's encrypted communications with Oracle. The recovered files revealed a conversation in which the mysterious correspondent explicitly threatened, "If you uncover too much, you will be silenced." The unequivocal tone of the threat left little doubt that Shaw's pursuit of the truth had provoked a dangerous reaction from someone within the system. Detective Baker theorized that Shaw's murder was not a random act of violence, but a calculated attempt to prevent his findings from coming to light, an attempt orchestrated by individuals who had too much to lose if the truth were revealed. The investigation then took a decisive turn when a former lab technician, recently dismissed under contentious circumstances, came forward with startling testimony. The technician, who wished to be identified only as Liam, recalled that he had once witnessed senior staff discussing balancing the experiment in ways that went far beyond routine adjustments. "I overheard them saying that if anyone started asking questions about the discrepancies, they would ensure that the person disappeared permanently," Liam said in a trembling voice. His account corroborated the internal memos and the encrypted messages, providing a human element to the cold, calculated strategy behind the cover-up. Armed with this wealth of evidence, Detective Baker coordinated a series of discreet raids on offices within the research department. In one confined administrative suite, federal agents discovered a locked filing cabinet containing a series of internal reports and revised research data. Among these was a ledger, a meticulously maintained record detailing every instance of supply adjustments and alterations to experimental results. The ledger, written in precise handwriting, traced the pattern of discrepancies over several months and included entries that matched the dates in Shaw's journal. The document was a smoking gun, a testament to the systematic tampering that had been engineered to meet funding targets. Its contents left no doubt: the data had been manipulated deliberately, and those responsible had taken extreme measures to cover their tracks. As the grand scope of the conspiracy became increasingly evident, Detective Baker compiled her findings into an extensive report that spanned hundreds of pages, a dossier of journal entries, digital recoveries, forensic analyses, and witness testimonies. The report was presented in a series of closed-door briefings to the district attorney, who immediately recognized the potential national significance of the case. Within weeks, a grand jury was convened to review the evidence, and in tense sessions held in a modest courthouse, the full extent of the data manipulation and internal cover-up was laid bare. The grand jury returned indictments on multiple charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, charges that directly linked the tampering operation to the murder of Dr. Adrian Shaw. The indictments implicated several mid-level administrators and technical staff members who had been involved in authorizing the adjustments, though many of the higher-level decision-makers managed to elude full prosecution through legal technicalities and the protective shield of institutional power. The outcome left a lingering sense of partial justice. While those directly responsible were punished, the true architects of the scheme remained in the shadows, their identities redacted from public records and their influence continuing to be felt behind the scenes. The trial that followed captivated not only the academic community but also the nation's attention. In a packed courtroom filled with faculty, students, and members of the public who had long trusted Eastwood University as a bastion of innovation, federal prosecutors presented their meticulously assembled case. Expert witnesses took the stand, their testimony detailed and measured. Digital forensic analysts demonstrated how the deleted emails had been painstakingly reconstructed, and forensic accountants presented charts and graphs showing how minor discrepancies in supply orders, when aggregated over time, amounted to a significant misappropriation of resources. Local historians, invited to provide context on the culture of academic research and the pressure to produce groundbreaking results, recounted the immense competitive drive within the biomedical field and how this had sometimes led to unethical practices. During the trial, the atmosphere was charged with both academic passion and raw emotion. A former colleague of Dr. Shaw, a young researcher who had once admired his dedication, tearfully testified about the pressure he felt to conform to a culture that prioritized results over integrity. Adrian believed that every anomaly was a clue, a piece of a puzzle that, if solved, could change everything, he said, voice breaking. He was a man who understood that the truth, no matter how inconvenient, must come to light. And now he's paid the ultimate price. His words resonated deeply with everyone present, casting a somber light on the high stakes of academic research. Detective Baker took the stand, her testimony a blend of factual precision and personal conviction. She recounted in detail the discovery of Dr. Shaw's body, the painstaking process of recovering his journal and digital communications, and the series of anonymous warnings that had foreshadowed the tragedy. Her clear, unwavering delivery lent a credibility to the case that was impossible to ignore. With every piece of evidence she presented, from the altered ledger to the recovered encrypted messages, she built a narrative that not only explained the methodical nature of the cover-up, but also illuminated the human cost of a system that placed profit and prestige above truth. The trial ended with several convictions. Mid-level administrators and technicians involved in the data manipulation were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, their actions documented in detail for the record. However, the verdict did not fully satisfy the community's demand for justice. Many of the top figures responsible for the overall strategy behind the cover-up managed to avoid severe punishment by exploiting complex legal loopholes and the protective structures of the institution. Their names remained largely redacted, leaving the public with an unsettling ambiguity about who truly wielded the power that had led to Dr. Shaw's murder. In the aftermath of the trial, Eastwood University was forced to confront its internal culture and the pressures that had driven individuals to compromise their ethics. The administration, under new leadership, introduced sweeping reforms to ensure transparency in research practices, including independent audits of experimental data and stricter oversight of supply chain processes. Student groups and faculty formed committees dedicated to promoting research integrity, and the university established a new office for ethical oversight in scientific research. The changes, though slow and met with resistance from some quarters, signaled a commitment to transforming the institution into one where the pursuit of knowledge was untainted by ulterior motives. Local media and independent journalists delved deeper into the case, publishing investigative reports that highlighted the systemic issues within academic research funding and the pressures that could lead even the most dedicated individuals to take extreme risks. Public forums were organized where citizens and scholars debated the ethics of research, the balance between competition and collaboration, and the need for accountability in institutions that held so much sway over public trust. The legacy of Dr. Adrian Shaw's relentless quest for truth became a rallying cry, a symbol of the high cost of integrity and the necessity of protecting those who dare to challenge entrenched power. Detective Baker, though lauded for her role in the investigation, continued her work with a quiet determination. Late at night, in the solitude of her modest office lined with case files and personal mementos, she would review Dr. Shaw's journal, the recovered encrypted emails, and the meticulous ledger entries that had once spelled out the hidden scheme. Each artifact was a reminder that the pursuit of truth is fraught with danger and sacrifice, and that even when justice is served in court, the battle against corruption and unethical practices is never truly over. Over time, the case became a touchstone in academic circles, a case study in investigative journalism and research ethics. Seminars were held at various universities to discuss the implications of data manipulation and the moral dilemmas faced by researchers under intense competitive pressure. Books were written, documentaries produced, and public debates sparked, all of which contributed to a broader movement for transparency in scientific research. The story of Dr. Shaw's final days and the tragic consequences of his unyielding commitment to accuracy resonated with a generation of scholars who saw in his fate a cautionary tale and an inspiration to stand firm in their own ethical convictions. Despite the legal victories and institutional reforms, many in the community felt that the full truth had never been completely uncovered. The elusive identity of Oracle, the shadowy correspondent who had sent those chilling warnings, remained a mystery, a symbol of the hidden forces that continued to influence the corridors of power at Eastwood University. The unresolved questions haunted not only those directly involved in the case, but also the broader academic community, serving as a constant reminder that systems of influence often operate in the shadows, beyond the reach of conventional justice. Yet even amid these lingering uncertainties, there was hope. New leadership at Eastwood University had pledged to foster an environment where academic inquiry could flourish without fear of retribution, and where every researcher's work would be subject to rigorous ethical standards. The changes brought about by the case had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the campus, inspiring reforms in funding agencies and government oversight of research institutions. The case had illuminated a dangerous intersection between ambition and morality, a place where the pressure to succeed could lead to choices that endanger lives and distort the very nature of truth. For Detective Baker, each new day was a reminder that the fight for integrity was an ongoing struggle. In every investigation that followed, whether it involved minor irregularities or major systemic failures, she carried with her the lessons learned from Dr. Shaw's case. The intricate web of digital evidence, the whispered warnings, and the painstaking work of recovering every shred of truth were not just technical achievements. They were a testament to the enduring power of determination in the face of overwhelming obstacles. In the years that followed the trial, the memory of Dr. Adrian Shaw became enshrined in local history. A memorial was erected in a quiet corner of the campus, bearing an inscription that read, "In every quest for truth, a sacrifice is made, but the light of knowledge endures." His legacy inspired a generation of young researchers to uphold the highest standards of scientific integrity, and his story was recounted in lectures, published articles, and community gatherings as a reminder of the price of silence. At Eastwood University, the halls once haunted by secrecy slowly transformed into spaces of open dialogue and collaborative inquiry. Faculty members and students alike began to challenge long-held assumptions and to question processes that had once been accepted without scrutiny. The institution, aware of its past mistakes, embarked on a journey to rebuild trust with both the academic community and the public. New protocols for data management, transparent funding practices, and independent review boards became the norm, all designed to ensure that the dark chapters of the past would not be repeated. Detective Imogen Baker continued her career with a deep sense of purpose. Though the case of Dr. Shaw had revealed painful truths and left many questions unanswered, it also reinforced her belief that no matter how daunting the challenge, the pursuit of truth was an imperative that must never be abandoned. Each new case that crossed her path was approached with the same careful scrutiny and unwavering determination, a commitment to ensuring that every voice, no matter how small, had the chance to be heard. As dusk fell over the campus each evening and the lights of research labs and lecture halls glowed softly against the night, the legacy of Dr. Adrian Shaw lingered like a quiet promise, a reminder that even in a world where ambition and power can obscure reality, the courage to seek out the truth remains the most enduring light of all. His sacrifice, though tragic, had sparked a movement, and his memory lived on in every reform enacted, every whispered conversation about research ethics, and every determined effort to create a future where transparency, accountability, and integrity are not merely ideals but lived realities. In the interplay between modern science and the timeless pursuit of knowledge, the story of that fateful night at Eastwood University remained etched into the collective memory of a community that refused to let corruption go unchallenged. And as long as there were those willing to examine every detail, to question every anomaly, and to resist the allure of unchecked ambition, the quest for truth would endure, a relentless, courageous journey into the heart of human integrity. Under the blazing heat of a midsummer sun, the remote desert valley transformed each evening into a pulsating oasis of music, art, and communal spirit. Every year, thousands traveled from far and wide to attend Sonic Horizons, an eclectic music festival renowned for its boundary-pushing performances and creative ambience. Tents and stages were arranged amid the rugged landscape, and as twilight descended, brilliant neon lights and LED displays danced across the dunes. The air vibrated with the sound of live bands, DJ sets, and the murmur of excited conversation as revelers lost themselves in the magic of the desert night. For many, Sonic Horizons was more than just a festival, it was a celebration of freedom and expression. Yet amid the revelry, a darker undercurrent was about to be revealed, one that would shatter the jubilant veneer and expose a secret network operating beneath the surface of this cherished event. Dylan Rivers, a dedicated sound technician with an innate ear for detail and a reputation for innovative problem-solving, had been an integral part of the festival's production for several years. He was known for his steady hand on the mixing board and his quiet determination to ensure that every performance sounded as flawless as possible. In the weeks leading up to the festival, Dylan had grown increasingly absorbed in his work. Late at night, when the festival grounds were nearly empty and only the hum of generators broke the silence, he could be seen poring over technical schematics and digital logs in a cramped sound booth nestled behind the main stage. His colleagues remarked that his focus had shifted from routine adjustments to a series of subtle anomalies in the equipment settings, tiny discrepancies that in his eyes were too consistent to be mere chance. On the final night of Sonic Horizons, as the headlining band set the stage ablaze with electrifying energy, the crowd's roar became a backdrop for an unfolding tragedy. Amid the dazzling lights and pulsating beats, no one noticed the quiet figure in the sound booth. When the final set ended and the festival's energy began to wane into a hazy calm, a sudden discovery sent shockwaves through the production crew. The body of Dylan Rivers was found slumped over his workstation, his eyes staring blankly at the flickering display screens, his labored breathing forever silenced. In his grasp was a torn scrap of paper, its message scrawled hastily in uneven ink: "Keep quiet or lose everything." Within minutes, uniformed officers and forensic teams converged on the sound booth. The once vibrant space, filled with the hum of well-tuned amplifiers and the organized clutter of cables and monitors, was transformed into a somber crime scene. Detective Clarissa Stone, a meticulous and unyielding investigator, known for her tenacity and ability to unravel even the most cryptic of clues, arrived to lead the inquiry. Under the harsh glare of portable floodlights, Clarissa examined every detail: the way Dylan's body was positioned as if he had collapsed suddenly from shock, the absence of any visible struggle, aside from the disrupted wires on the console, and the cryptic note clenched in his hand, which hinted at a message meant to silence a quest for truth. Over the next several days, Detective Stone conducted exhaustive interviews with festival staff, volunteers, and local vendors. Janelle Ortiz, a stagehand with years of experience at Sonic Horizons, recalled that Dylan had been different lately, more focused, almost obsessively so. "He used to joke about the magic of sound," Janelle murmured, voice thick with sadness, "but in the weeks before, he'd be alone in the booth for hours, checking the settings, re-listening to recordings. He'd scribble notes on a pad he always carried, and sometimes he'd glance around nervously, as if he feared someone was watching him." Other crew members recalled that on several occasions, Dylan had mentioned small glitches in the equipment, moments when the audio levels didn't match the on-screen data, or when the settings seemed altered in a way that defied standard procedures. These observations, once dismissed as technical quirks, now resonated with a more sinister possibility. Investigators obtained access to Dylan's personal belongings from his modest trailer, located near the festival's support facilities. Inside, amidst posters of legendary sound engineers and an assortment of vintage mixing consoles, they found his battered notebook. Its pages were filled with meticulous entries, diagrams of sound circuits, and fragments of technical data. Early pages were filled with routine observations, notes on equipment calibration, reminders about cable organization, and schedules for sound checks. However, as the entries advanced in time, a darker narrative emerged. Dylan had noted a recurring pattern: every performance, certain critical settings were altered by a few decibels, seemingly without cause. He wrote, "When the volume is off, it's like someone is muting the truth. Every night, it happens again, quiet, almost imperceptible, but deliberate." One entry, written in a hurried scrawl just days before his death, warned, "I must document every adjustment. If they see what I'm onto, I'm in danger." But silence isn't an option. The tone was urgent, tinged with fear, and it painted a picture of a man determined to expose a discrepancy that, in his view, could have dangerous implications. Digital forensic specialists managed to recover fragments of deleted text messages and emails from Dylan's tablet. Among these was a series of exchanges with a mysterious contact, known only as Silhouette. One message read, "Don't push any further, or you'll be out of the picture." Another warned, "Some secrets are dangerous, stop now before it's too late." The chilling brevity of these messages confirmed Detective Stone's growing suspicion that Dylan's investigation had not gone unnoticed, and that his pursuit of technical anomalies had threatened someone with both the power and the resources to silence him permanently. As the investigation unfolded, Detective Stone's team turned its focus to the operational aspects of the festival's sound system. They interviewed technical staff, scrutinized equipment logs, and examined the digital records from the sound booth. The evidence revealed that the discrepancies noted by Dylan were not random but followed a precise recurring pattern. Each time the festival hosted a major performance, the critical audio settings would be subtly adjusted, lowered in some instances, raised in others, by an amount that, while seemingly negligible, could alter the overall impact of the sound. Forensic analysis confirmed that these adjustments were made through remote access protocols, and the logs indicated that the commands were issued by an account that was not typically used by the regular technical staff. The investigation soon uncovered that the account in question was linked to a temporary contractor hired by the festival's management, a technician named Rowan Hayes. Rowan was a relatively recent addition to the crew, known for his expertise in digital systems and his background in high-end audio engineering. His resume boasted several prestigious projects, and his skills had quickly earned him a position of trust. However, when Detective Stone questioned Rowan, his demeanor shifted. He offered vague explanations about routine maintenance and system calibrations, but inconsistencies in his statements and a reluctance to provide detailed accounts of his activities during the final performance raised red flags. Rowan's digital footprint was scrutinized further, and it was discovered that he had logged into the sound system's remote management console at unusual hours, times that coincided with the recurring discrepancies noted by Dylan. Moreover, a review of Rowan's email correspondence revealed a series of cryptic messages between him and an unknown recipient with the moniker Chorus. In one message, Rowan wrote, "The adjustments must remain unchallenged. The show must go on, no matter the cost." The language was measured and almost detached, yet it carried an undercurrent of determination that was difficult to ignore. With mounting evidence pointing to a deliberate tampering of the sound system, Detective Stone expanded her inquiry to explore possible motives behind the operation. Interviews with festival organizers revealed that Sonic Horizons had been struggling financially in recent years. Ticket sales had plateaued, and sponsors had begun to pull out amid changing market trends. In a desperate bid to boost the festival's appeal, the management had recently signed a contract with a high-profile sound equipment provider that promised cutting-edge technology and unparalleled audio quality. Rumors had circulated that the new system was so advanced that it could be remotely adjusted to create tailored sound experiences for each performance, a feature that, if exploited, could be used to manipulate the audience's perception of the music. One theory emerged that the tampering might have been an attempt to deliberately sabotage performances, to create a scenario where the altered sound quality would generate negative reviews, ultimately forcing the festival to cancel its contract and triggering a lucrative insurance payout for the management. Alternatively, it was speculated that the adjustments might have been used to create a competitive edge, enhancing the experience for a select few performances while devaluing others to favor certain sponsors. The financial stakes were high, and the potential for exploitation was enormous. In either case, the prospect of such a scheme provided a compelling motive for those who would stop at nothing to control the narrative and the bottom line. As Detective Stone and her team delved deeper, they uncovered additional digital evidence linking Rowan Hayes to a series of unauthorized transactions. Financial records from the festival's internal system revealed small irregular transfers to an offshore account registered under a shell corporation. The amounts were minimal on their own, but when aggregated over the course of several months amounted to a significant sum, a sum that could easily be siphoned off to fund illicit operations. Forensic accountants determined that these transfers were masked as operational adjustments and were approved by an account associated with the new sound systems contractor. The evidence suggested that Rowan Hayes, perhaps acting on orders from higher up, had been involved in a scheme to divert funds from the festival's budget. Meanwhile, Detective Stone received another anonymous tip. A handwritten note slipped under her office door. The note, typed in a simple, stark font, warned the final note will be played for those who overstep. The message was cryptic, but its tone was unmistakably menacing, reinforcing the idea that powerful interests were at play. The note did little to dissuade Stone. If anything, it strengthened her resolve to pursue every lead until the full extent of the conspiracy was exposed. With each new discovery, the investigation began to piece together a labyrinthine network of manipulation. The tampering with the sound system, the unauthorized financial transfers, and the persistent warnings all pointed to an operation that extended beyond routine technical adjustments. It was a calculated effort to influence the very essence of the festival, the sound that defined each performance, the emotional impact of every note, and ultimately, the reputation of Sonic Horizons itself. In a decisive operation, federal agents, working in close collaboration with local law enforcement, executed a series of search warrants at the offices of the sound equipment provider and at storage facilities on the outskirts of the festival grounds. In one nondescript warehouse, investigators uncovered a cache of specialized audio components, along with detailed logs that recorded every instance of remote adjustments made during the festival's performances. The digital records were meticulously organized, listing dates, times, and the exact values by which the audio settings had been modified. The logs confirmed that the remote commands originated from an account linked to Rowan Hayes and that they had been issued consistently over several high-profile performances. The physical evidence, combined with the digital trail, was damning. It demonstrated that someone had systematically manipulated the festival's audio experience for reasons that remained murky. Armed with this overwhelming evidence, Detective Stone compiled her findings into an extensive report and presented it to the district attorney in a series of confidential briefings. The report detailed every facet of the investigation, from the discovery of Dylan Rivers' body in the sound booth to the reconstruction of the digital communications between Rowan Hayes and the mysterious chorus. It was a dossier of painstaking research, corroborated testimonies, and irrefutable digital evidence that painted a picture of a covert operation operating with chilling efficiency. The district attorney, recognizing the potential national implications of the case, promptly convened a grand jury to review the evidence. Over the course of several tense sessions in a modest courthouse, the grand jury was presented with the full scope of the conspiracy. Expert witnesses testified about the intricate nature of the digital adjustments and the systematic pattern of unauthorized transfers. The recovered communications from Silhouette, Oracle, and Chorus were laid out alongside eyewitness accounts and technical logs, forming a mosaic of deliberate interference designed to control the narrative at Sonic Horizons. In a moment that resonated with the gravity of the case, the grand jury returned indictments on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide, charges that directly linked the manipulation of the sound system and the diversion of funds to the murder of Dylan Rivers. The trial that followed captivated not only the local community but also the broader public, who had come to see Sonic Horizons as a symbol of artistic expression and cultural vibrancy. In a packed courtroom, federal prosecutors presented their case with meticulous detail. Digital forensic analysts demonstrated how the deleted emails had been painstakingly reconstructed, while forensic accountants used detailed graphs to show how the minor adjustments in audio levels, when aggregated over time, amounted to a deliberate misappropriation of funds. Witnesses from the festival staff and technical crew recounted the subtle changes they had observed during performances, an occasional distortion in the audio, a slight shift in volume that seemed unintentional at first, but now took on a more sinister significance. Detective Stone took the stand, her testimony a blend of clinical precision and heartfelt sorrow. She recounted the night of the discovery, the moment the uniformed officers found Dylan's lifeless body in the sound booth, the shock in the eyes of the maintenance worker, the eerie calm of a space that should have vibrated with energy. She detailed the painstaking process of recovering his personal journal, the encrypted messages from Chorus, and the digital logs that traced every remote adjustment. Her words painted a vivid picture of a man who had risked everything to preserve the integrity of a cultural institution, only to be silenced by those who thrived on secrecy and exploitation. Every detail, from the precise timing of the audio adjustments to the tone of the anonymous threats, was presented as a testament to the calculated nature of the cover-up. The prosecution's case was compelling, and as the trial drew to a close, the jury delivered its verdict with a mix of relief and lingering disquiet. Several mid-level technicians and administrators were convicted on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to homicide. They received lengthy prison sentences, and their names were etched into the official record as the operatives who had tampered with the festival's soul. Yet many in the courtroom felt that the outcome was only partial justice. The highest-level conspirators, the shadowy figures who had orchestrated the operation from behind the scenes, managed to evade full accountability by exploiting legal complexities and the protective layers of corporate power. Their identities remained largely redacted from public documents, leaving behind a haunting reminder that the full truth had not been completely exposed. In the aftermath of the trial, Sonic Horizons became a symbol of both artistic brilliance and the heavy cost of compromised integrity. The festival's management, under intense public scrutiny, implemented sweeping reforms in collaboration with independent auditors. New protocols were established for verifying the integrity of the sound systems, and the remote access channels were overhauled to ensure that no unauthorized adjustments could ever be made again. The incident spurred local government officials to re-examine contracts with vendors and to demand greater transparency from companies that provided technical services for public events. The changes were gradual but significant, a commitment to restoring the public's trust in an institution that had once been a beacon of creative expression. Public discussions and media reports about the case resonated deeply within the community. Cultural critics and tech experts debated the implications of the manipulation of live performance technology, raising questions about the intersection of art and commerce in the digital age. The story of Dylan Rivers became a rallying cry for those who believed that integrity in art and technology was paramount, a reminder that the pursuit of excellence should never come at the expense of honesty and public safety. Documentaries were produced, academic conferences were convened, and a series of public lectures on media ethics and digital accountability emerged, all drawing on the evidence uncovered during the investigation. For Detective Clarissa Stone, the case left an indelible mark on her career and her conscience. Late at night, in the quiet solitude of her modest office, she would review the recovered files and re-watch the enhanced surveillance footage, images of a shadowy figure, the unmistakable glow of a projector screen, and the final desperate message left in Dylan's grasp. Each piece of evidence was a reminder of the immense cost of uncovering the truth, a truth that had been manipulated for profit and power. Her determination to see the case through was not just professional, it was personal. In every new investigation, she carried the lessons learned from the Sonic Horizons case, that even the smallest discrepancy can reveal a vast network of deception, and that no matter how deeply hidden, every secret is worth exposing. As the years passed, the legacy of the case became woven into the cultural fabric of the community. Sonic Horizons continued to thrive as a festival, its stages once again filled with the sounds of live music and the laughter of fans. But beneath the surface, the memory of that fateful night lingered, a silent caution that vigilance and transparency must always be maintained in the face of technological manipulation and unchecked ambition. The case became a subject of study in media ethics programs and was memorialized in local art installations that celebrated the courage of those who dared to challenge a corrupt system. Detective Stone, now regarded as one of the leading investigators in cases involving digital evidence and corporate misconduct, continued her work with a steadfast resolve. Every time she encountered a new anomaly in a system or received a cryptic message from an unknown source, she remembered the sacrifice of Dylan Rivers and the relentless pursuit of truth that had defined his life. The battle for integrity, she knew, was never truly over. It was an ongoing struggle against forces that, despite their wealth and influence, could not ultimately silence the human desire for honesty. In the end, the case of Sonic Horizons was not defined by a neat conclusion or a single triumphant moment. Instead, it was a complex tapestry of human ambition, technological intrigue, and the relentless quest for truth, a reminder that even in a world driven by dazzling lights and digital innovation, the pursuit of authenticity remains the most valuable and enduring endeavor. The story of Dylan Rivers and the dark operation known only as Project Echo became a permanent chapter in the annals of the community, a cautionary tale for future generations about the dangers of unchecked power, the cost of compromising integrity, and the eternal light that shines when one dares to expose the truth. And so, as the neon glow of the festival lights faded into the desert night, and the crowd's applause was replaced by whispered conversations and determined looks, the legacy of that long, fateful night endured. It was a legacy that reminded everyone that every piece of digital data, every altered setting, every anonymous warning was a small victory in the ongoing fight for transparency. In the interplay between light and shadow, between the vibrant energy of live music and the quiet determination of those who sought justice, the truth, fragile yet unyielding, continued to emerge, one carefully uncovered detail at a time. In the quiet town of Westridge, a community tucked away among gently rolling hills and sprawling fields, life moved at a measured pace. Neighbors greeted each other by name, and time-worn traditions were passed from one generation to the next. The centerpiece of community life was Westridge High School, a venerable brick building whose red-tiled roof and ivy-clad walls held decades of memories. It was here, amid the chatter of lunchtime conversations and the echo of the school bell, that one beloved teacher's life came to a tragic, mysterious end. Caroline Everett had taught literature at Westridge High for nearly 15 years. Beloved by students and respected by colleagues, she was known not only for her passion for poetry and classic novels, but also for her keen interest in the town's hidden history. Over the years, Caroline had become something of an amateur historian, gathering old newspapers, town records, and faded photographs. Late into the evenings, after her classes had ended and the corridors had fallen silent, she would remain behind in her modest classroom, poring over archival documents and scribbling notes in a worn leather-bound journal. Caroline's curiosity had recently taken on an urgent tone. Whispers among long-time residents suggested that decades ago, a respected local journalist had vanished under mysterious circumstances, a case that had never been solved and had left a lingering stain on Westridge's reputation. Intrigued by the possibility that the official records might conceal inconvenient truths, Caroline had begun to cross-reference historical property deeds, police reports, and obituaries. In her journal, she had noted irregularities in the land records of several prominent families, and she speculated that a powerful local dynasty, known simply as the Harringtons, might have been involved in a cover-up that had silenced voices and rewritten history. On a crisp November evening, as a light mist clung to the sidewalks and the last of the autumn light faded behind the hills, Caroline stayed late to work in her classroom. The building, usually a refuge of quiet study after the final bell, now held a solitary hush broken only by the soft scratch of her pen on paper and the occasional hum of the aging heating system. She was deep in thought, carefully transcribing an old article from the local paper that mentioned the unsolved disappearance of journalist Victor Mann, a case that had long been shrouded in rumor and half-remembered details. As she reached for another document from a stack on her desk, a sudden sharp noise startled her. In that brief disorienting moment, her hand jerked, and the candle on her desk wavered, casting erratic shadows on the walls. The next morning, when the janitor arrived to prepare the building for the day's classes, he found Caroline's classroom door ajar. Inside, amid scattered papers and overturned books, lay her lifeless body. Her eyes, wide open and fixed in an expression of shock, seemed to plead silently for help. On the floor beside her, clutched tightly in her hand, was a torn scrap of paper with a single chilling message in hurried script: "Some secrets must never be disturbed." News of Caroline's untimely death spread through Westridge like wildfire. Shock and sorrow gripped the community as parents, students, and fellow teachers struggled to comprehend how a gentle soul, so dedicated to both education and the preservation of history, could be taken in such a brutal and mysterious manner. The local police, unaccustomed to violence in their small town, quickly mobilized. Within hours, the school was cordoned off and forensic teams arrived, their careful documentation transforming the once familiar classroom into a crime scene that seemed more at home in a thriller novel than in a peaceful town. Detective Serena Cole, recently assigned to the Westridge Police Department and known for her careful, methodical approach, took charge of the investigation. In the quiet, chilly light of early morning, she stepped into the classroom and surveyed the scene. Every detail caught her attention: the neat piles of books now strewn about in disarray, the delicate smear of blood on the polished wood floor, and the cryptic note clutched in Caroline's hand. There was no sign of a struggle beyond the chaos caused by the abrupt interruption of her work, a sign, Serena suspected, that the attack had been executed with precision. The note in particular spoke volumes. "Some secrets must never be disturbed" was not the rambling of a frenzied mind, but a calculated message meant for someone who had dared to dig too deeply. Over the next few days, Detective Cole conducted an exhaustive round of interviews with Westridge High's staff and local residents. Many remembered Caroline as a teacher who had inspired her students to question the world around them. Mr. Lewis, the retired history teacher who had mentored Caroline, recalled her passion for uncovering hidden truths. She believed that every town has its skeletons, he said softly, eyes glistening with memories. Caroline was always determined to bring those secrets to light, even if it meant challenging those in power. Other teachers mentioned that Caroline had become increasingly withdrawn in recent weeks, her warm demeanor replaced by a haunted intensity. One student, shy and trembling, recalled that Caroline had once confided, "I'm getting close to something big, something that might change everything." But sometimes, the truth can be dangerous. Detective Cole requested access to Caroline's personal belongings, and with the cooperation of her family, her home was searched. In a modest apartment filled with mementos of a life dedicated to learning and community service, investigators found her leather journal. Its pages were filled with carefully penned observations about the town's history, notes on obscure property records, and meticulous cross-references of newspaper clippings. Early entries were filled with admiration for the legacy of Westridge, praise for its founders and its enduring traditions. But as the pages advanced, Caroline's tone shifted to one of cautious inquiry. She wrote of discrepancies in the official land records of the town's oldest families, and in one entry she noted, "The records don't match what is publicly known. Some transactions have been altered, as if to hide a truth that is too embarrassing or too dangerous." The journal was a testament to her scholarly rigor and her determination to question an official narrative that many had long accepted without doubt. Digital forensic specialists were able to recover deleted emails from Caroline's university-issued laptop. Among the fragments were communications with an unknown correspondent who signed off simply as Hermes. In one particularly damning exchange, the message read, "If you keep poking around, you'll wish you hadn't. Some truths are better left buried." The message, stripped of any personal warmth, left a clear impression. Someone with considerable influence had taken notice of Caroline's inquiries, and had decided that the investigation must be stopped permanently. As the layers of the investigation accumulated, Detective Cole began to suspect that Caroline's death was not the result of a random act of violence, but a deliberate attempt to silence a threat to a long-standing cover-up. All signs pointed to a secret history, one that involved the powerful Thorne family, a name whispered about in hushed tones in Westridge for generations. The Thorne family, known for their philanthropy and local influence, had a storied past that was interwoven with both the town's celebrated history and its darker episodes. Public records indicated that the Thorne estate had grown through a series of controversial property acquisitions, some of which were riddled with discrepancies that Caroline had noted in her journal. It appeared that the Thorne patriarch, Richard Thorne, had used his clout to alter historical documents, erasing the names of previous landowners and rewriting property deeds to secure vast swaths of land for his family's benefit. In a series of interviews with longtime residents, Detective Cole gathered accounts that painted a complex picture of the Thorne legacy. One elderly woman recalled that in her youth, there were rumors that a prominent local newspaper had once run a story suggesting that the Thorne family had orchestrated a cover-up following a scandal that involved embezzlement and the mysterious disappearance of a civic leader. Although the details were murky, her recollections aligned with the inconsistencies Caroline had uncovered. "There were always secrets in our town," the woman said, voice barely above a whisper. "The powerful have a way of protecting their legacies, sometimes by any means necessary." Determined to pursue every lead, Detective Cole arranged a meeting with a local archivist at the Westridge Historical Society. Mr. Franklin, a bespectacled man with decades of experience poring over dusty documents, confirmed that several property records related to the Thorne family had been revised multiple times over the past century. "It's as if the truth was erased and rewritten, piece by piece," he murmured, flipping through a fragile folder of old deeds. "I've seen annotations in the margins that suggest someone was actively trying to alter the record. It's disturbing, but not entirely unexpected in a town where power is concentrated in the hands of a few." Mr. Franklin's testimony provided a critical link to Caroline's findings, reinforcing the theory that her investigation had uncovered a conspiracy that stretched back decades. As the investigation deepened, digital forensic specialists continued to decode more of the deleted emails and text messages from Caroline's devices. One recovered conversation with Hermes suggested that the correspondent had connections with local political operatives, a hint that the cover-up might not be limited solely to property records but might extend into the realm of political influence. The anonymous messages warned repeatedly that the past is best left untouched and that any attempts to revisit old records would be met with severe consequences. These threats, combined with the physical evidence recovered from the scene, convinced Detective Cole that Caroline's death had been premeditated, a final desperate measure by those who feared that the truth once revealed would unravel their carefully maintained power. Federal agents were eventually brought in to assist with the more technical aspects of the case. Their advanced tools allowed them to reconstruct an almost complete timeline of the digital communications and to correlate the anomalies in the property records with the internal memos obtained from the local county clerk's office. The forensic accountant's report, presented in a series of closed-door briefings, revealed that over a span of several decades, the cumulative effect of the altered deeds and omitted transactions had transferred thousands of acres of land into the hands of the Thorne family, land that, according to original records, had belonged to families that had built the town from its humble beginnings. With this compelling evidence, Detective Cole's team compiled an extensive dossier that detailed every facet of the investigation. The file included Caroline's meticulous journal, the recovered digital communications, the altered property records, and the testimonies of longtime residents, archivists, and former public officials. The report was presented to the district attorney, who recognized that the case was not merely a local tragedy but a matter of national significance, a striking example of how historical manipulation and cover-ups can have devastating, long-lasting consequences. In a series of grand jury sessions held in a modest courthouse, the full extent of the conspiracy was laid bare. Expert witnesses testified about the methods used to alter the records, the subtle discrepancies that had been overlooked for generations, and the deliberate, systematic efforts to erase inconvenient truths from the town's official history. The grand jury ultimately returned indictments on charges ranging from fraud and conspiracy to accessory to homicide, charges that directly linked the manipulation of historical records to Caroline Everett's murder. While the indictments named several mid-level administrators and clerks who had carried out the adjustments, many of the top-level conspirators remained elusive, their names redacted from public documents and their true identities shielded by a legacy of power. The trial that followed captured the attention of the entire community. In a crowded courtroom filled with residents, journalists, and activists, federal prosecutors presented their case with unwavering precision. Expert forensic historians demonstrated, through side-by-side comparisons of original deeds and revised documents, how the Thorne family had systematically rewritten the town's history. Digital forensic analysts showcased reconstructed emails and text messages, their stark language laying bare the threats that had been issued to Caroline in her final days. Former county officials and local archivists testified about the changes in public records and the culture of secrecy that had long pervaded Westridge. Their collective testimony was a powerful indictment of a system that had sacrificed transparency for the sake of protecting entrenched interests. Detective Cole took the stand with quiet resolve, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and determination. She recounted in detail the discovery of Caroline Everett's body, the painstaking process of recovering her journal and digital files, and the subsequent chain of evidence that had led to the unmasking of the cover-up. Every carefully documented detail, from the faded ink on the scrap of paper to the precise dates of altered property records, was presented as a testament to Caroline's unwavering commitment to the truth and to the heavy cost she had paid for it. The courtroom was silent as she described the series of anonymous warnings, the subtle alterations that had skewed historical records, and the relentless pursuit of a conspiracy that had spanned generations. While several mid-level administrators and clerks were convicted on charges of fraud and conspiracy, the trial ended with a sense of incomplete justice. Many of the high-ranking figures who had orchestrated the historical cover-up managed to avoid the harshest penalties by exploiting legal technicalities and the protective veneer of their long-standing influence. Their names, though alluded to in internal memos and whispered about in court, remained largely hidden from the public record, a bitter reminder that the full extent of the conspiracy had not been entirely exposed. In the aftermath of the trial, Westridge began a slow, painful process of healing. The community, long divided by whispers of hidden scandals, came together in a series of town hall meetings and public forums to demand greater transparency and accountability from those in power. Local government officials introduced new measures designed to safeguard historical records and ensure that future property transactions would be subject to independent audits. The once revered Thorne legacy was now viewed with a critical eye, as residents demanded that their town's true history be acknowledged and preserved. Independent journalists and academic scholars continued to investigate the broader implications of the case. Documentaries were produced that chronicled Caroline Everett's dedication and the systemic failures that had led to her untimely death. University lectures and community workshops explored the ethics of historical record, keeping in the dangers of allowing corporate or familial power to shape the narrative of a community's past. Caroline's story became a symbol of resilience and the unyielding pursuit of truth, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming pressure, the courage to question and to document is a legacy that endures. Detective Cole, whose career had been defined by the relentless quest to bring hidden truths to light, continued her work with a deep-seated resolve. In quiet moments in her modest office, walls adorned with case files and personal mementos of past investigations, she would reread Caroline's journal and examine the digital footprints that had been so painstakingly recovered. Though the lingering mysteries, the identity of Hermes, the exact nature of the changes in the property records, and the elusive influence of the Thorne family remained unresolved, each new piece of evidence was a small victory in the ongoing battle for historical integrity. Over the years, the case of Caroline Everett and the decades-long cover-up became a cornerstone of local lore, a story recounted at community gatherings, studied in academic circles, and remembered as a turning point in Westridge's history. The once quiet town began to transform its approach to transparency. Independent oversight committees were established, and public access to historical documents was greatly expanded. New leaders emerged, committed to ensuring that no secret, however deeply buried, could ever again be allowed to distort the town's narrative. For many, the legacy of the case was not just a tale of tragedy, but a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance. In every meticulously revised record, and in every public meeting where citizens demanded accountability, the spirit of Caroline Everett lived on. Her dedication to uncovering the truth had sparked a movement, a resolve to reclaim the past and to honor the sacrifices made by those who dared to challenge entrenched power. As autumn gave way to winter, and the quiet streets of Westridge were dusted with the first flakes of snow, the community slowly began to heal. The old records, once shrouded in secrecy, were now subject to scrutiny, and every transaction was carefully documented for future generations. The story of Caroline Everett and the cover-up that claimed her life served as both a cautionary tale and an enduring inspiration, a call to ensure that the quest for truth, no matter how arduous, remains an essential part of a free and open society. In the final analysis, the case was a tapestry of courage, loss, and the relentless determination to expose injustice. It was a narrative that transcended the confines of a single murder, evolving into a broader dialogue about the power of historical truth and the price that must sometimes be paid to safeguard it. Though the courtroom verdict did not unmask every conspirator, it ignited a lasting commitment within the community of Westridge, a commitment to honor the past, to learn from its dark chapters, and to build a future where transparency and accountability are the foundation of all public endeavors. Detective Serena Cole, her name now synonymous with the pursuit of hidden truths, continued her career with a quiet resolve, aware that the battle for integrity is never fully won but must be fought every day. In every new investigation, every whispered anomaly, every uncovered secret, she saw the echo of Caroline Everett's unwavering dedication. And in that echo lay the promise that even in a world where the past is often rewritten for convenience, the truth will ultimately emerge, one painstaking detail at a time. As the years turned and Westridge transformed from a town with a troubled history into a community dedicated to openness, the memory of that fateful autumn remained a permanent part of its identity. Public murals, commemorative plaques, and educational programs all bore the imprint of Caroline's sacrifice, a solemn yet hopeful reminder that while the journey for truth can be fraught with peril, its rewards are immeasurable. For in every archived record and in every vigilant inquiry, the light of authenticity continues to shine, guiding those who believe that history, in all its complexity, must be preserved and honored. And so, as the quiet winter nights settled over Westridge and the old high school clock chimed with the passing of time, the legacy of Caroline Everett endured, not as a relic of a painful past, but as a beacon for future generations, urging them to question, to investigate, and to ensure that in the tapestry of our shared history, every thread of truth is woven in with the strength of unyielding conviction.